What up, Oasis?
Hello.
Hey.
Ben is gone again.
It's your girl.
So we have Jaina.
Yeah.
Super excited.
Not as
to
a
have
second
Jaina.
choice, but as a first
choice.
substitute choice.
Yes.
That's fine.
She has experience. She has skill. She's awesome. But hey, I have a question as we dive in.
Yeah, let's get
So what's like one thing that you are an advocate for? Like that you would like try and get people to be on your side for?
That's a good question. You want to go?
Yeah. Brendan hates that I say this. I don't
hate it. It's your opinion. You're entitled to it.
I don't think Helen Keller did all the things that she claims to have done. I think she's fake. I think she existed as a person, but I think her entire story is totally fake.
See, I think you started with this, like, the actual thesis claim of, like, she didn't do all the things. That, I'm like, okay, I don't agree. And then you went, she's fake. And it was just like, she's
fake. Her story is fake.
That's your thing to sway people towards. Someone listening maybe is like, that's intriguing.
My conspiracy theory that I'm in.
Give us one fact.
One fact?
Or like one reason that if you were trying to sway the people listening, give them one bullet point of why you think they should jump on team Helen Keller is not who everybody thinks she is.
If someone is deaf and blind, I do not understand how they could possibly come to learn to understand how to speak and write and all those things.
Isn't that the beauty of the... I'm not going to critique it. Whatever, that's fine.
I don't think it's possible.
Sure. Sure, not possible. Or is it? What's yours?
I might be biased, but I think Kansas City might be the greatest city in the entire world.
Wow.
The entire world is crazy.
Wow.
Crazy.
It doesn't even exist in one single state. People in Kansas City don't even know what state they live in.
That's not true.
People outside Kansas City don't even know what state Kansas City's in.
Because you're uneducated.
Oh, no. It's nonsense.
You just look at what side of the river you're on.
The whole world is crazy. Even in the U.S., it's still a little crazy, but the whole world is
It's
wild.
small enough you don't have to deal with traffic. It's big enough, though. You have everything. Like, everything you could have in L.A. or Denver, you have in Kansas City.
Oh.
You really don't have traffic?
Like, I mean, like, you get traffic, but not, like, the crazy stuff you'd have in California.
Oh, okay.
You still have rush hour stuff, but nothing like...
I don't think you get everything that L.A. has to offer in Kansas City, Missouri.
Okay, not
Kansas.
the Missouri side. The Kansas side.
But then that's nonsense. It's nonsense. But it's whatever.
All right.
I don't think you're getting many people with that one either. Here's the hard part for mine. I'll do mine. I think it changes every single week. I am a very...
That's true.
Yes. I'm all in on the things that I'm all in on. I like to say I have a pretty addictive personality. And so when something catches me, like I'm all in and I want everyone else all in. So like this week, God, what would I say is something? I think lately it's just been pizza. Like
You're just on a pizza kick?
I'm just on a pizza kick. Like if I'm all in on pizza, I think everybody should be all in on pizza.
Specific
No,
places?
It's not even a hard sell. It's just like pizza's the best. Like I think people like to advocate for different foods and there's burger people out there and whatever. Or like... I don't know why I'm just thinking of food. I'm kind of hungry. But I grilled hot dogs for the first time. And grilled hot dogs are the best summer food. Like that's one of the opinions I think I've pushed this week. And then people are like, no, like you got to get a burger. Or like...
no. You can have a burger any time of the year, but
whatever.
a hot dog is a summer
hot
food.
Dog on the grill, coming off and it's like charcoaly and like splits open. And then you throw a little like all the condiments.
The juice is seeping out.
Yeah. So
I just got back from an all-inclusive, all-you-can-eat cruise.
Did you have hot dogs?
I think for 3 meals.
But boiled is totally different. So many people boil hot dogs, and it's just like, fine. It's fine.
That's what I grew up on.
Or they grill them, but they undercook them, and so they're just warm, but they don't have the char, and you gotta
they gotta be
charred.
They gotta snap when you bite into them.
So that's I think I did that Monday. I think I grilled hot dogs, and so that's probably been my thing. But I also love pizza. So I've talked about pizza too much this month.
Hey, we'll have hot dogs May 4th at Send-Off.
Good.
Oh, there we go.
And I always tell
Mark
the
it on your
griller,
calendar.
make one extra dark for me.
Yeah.
And then they look at me like I'm crazy.
Burn that sucker.
Absolutely.
But anyways, all of us, I think we have things that when we're in our community, we talk about. And so I'm sure all these things have come up at some point. And then you're around people and you actually have power and influence over the people that you're around. And when it comes to walking every day with Jesus, I think one of the misconceptions is that pastors are the only people that have influence because we often have a microphone and stand on stage and get to talk in front of a lot of people. And that's really like not the case. Honestly, probably you listening have more influence in the life of an unbeliever than we actually do.
Yeah.
Because a lot of the work that we do, especially with Oasis and how our team is set up, is like pouring into our leaders and our ministry team so that way they can go out and then they're filled and equipped to now meet with other people. And so that's kind of our topic for today, is kind of just looking at the fact that all of us have influence. And so how can we use that influence well?
Yeah, I think one of the things that's unique about Oasis is people see the scope and the size. It's like, wow, 500 plus people on a Sunday night. And it's like, there is so much potential there for impact, which is 100%, right? There's a reason I spend, or Emily or Jana, we spend hours during the week prepping for that hour-long gathering. Like you spend 15 to 20 hours prepping and teaching, preparing and practicing this so you can articulate clearly what God is trying to say. And we're never going to try and diminish the power of that moment. God is, he's uniquely set up the church where that is a beautiful, holy moment of transformation. And yet, like, we have thousands of people who would call themselves Christians on an SDSU campus or in a Brookings community, who every day rub shoulders with friends and coworkers and family members. And so there's so much more impact that happens within the, how many hours are in a week? You guys know that statistic? Is it like 57?
24 times 7.
Oh, 100.
But what is it, waking hours?
It doesn't matter. There's a statistic out there where someone has aligned like how many hours in a week, and then they compare like the 1 hour of your Sunday gathering compared to all the hours that you have in a week, and the potential of you in the midst of your everyday routine to impact people. Like that is actually like largely exponentially more than maybe just an hour on a Sunday. So yeah.
And I think it's really cool to have Jane in this podcast this week, because I think part of it too comes down to defining like how you worship. Because if your worship is more than just what you do on a Sunday morning for an hour, then you're going to be able to appreciate your influence and your position and your placement, I think, a lot more than if you just view like your worship only as a Sunday morning experience. But I think if we just start with influence, like a definition here, it's just the ability to affect someone else's thinking, behavior, or development just by who you are and how you live. And I think that's crazy. Like just the fact, like how you treat someone at Qdoba when you get your food can impact the person behind you and like how they process like what does it mean to be Christian. And even just like really, really small things that we do throughout our day are really powerful.
And by that definition, everyone has influence.
Yeah.
And that's part of the misconception, is just because I don't have power or title or authority doesn't mean I don't have influence. Or even just because I don't have a large connection group or a lot of people who I surround myself with doesn't mean you don't have influence. Like even in the littlest of interactions, there's a chance for us to impact people and change the way they think or believe or even just, show who Jesus is. And so that's cool. I love that.
And it's both through your words, it's through your actions, and it's also through your presence. And someone asked me this question a couple weeks ago, but it was like, what taste is left in the room when you leave? And I think that's usually a pretty good indicator on whether you're having a positive or negative influence on the people you're around. When you leave, do people feel like excited and happy and joyful? Not because you're leaving, but because they had a good time with you. Or like when you leave, are people like drained and freaked out and all of that?
Well, it's like, what's the vibe?
Yeah.
Right? You know people who are a good vibe and like are a pleasure to have in the room, and you get excited when you see them, and like you know people who aren't. And sometimes, like if we're honest, we're both of those people. Especially I know I am. Like sometimes I'm like I show up and it's good, and sometimes I show up and I'm just I'm taking the culture and the vibe. And so how do you in your everyday life set a barometer to that and be able to gauge that? I like the idea of what taste do you leave, because in my mind like I would have used the word aroma, or like what's the smell in the room after you leave. I don't know why my mind goes there, but we don't really want to ask that question, do we?
I think I like taste more.
I don't know if I like either of them, but I understand the idea.
But then maybe let's move on. So we all have influence. No matter like if you only know 2 people in your life, you still have influence. Because there's still 2 people you can influence. So how do we actually steward this well? And I think the first thing is from proximity. It actually comes, are you willing to be near the 2 people that you have? Are you willing to actually sit with them and talk with them and engage with them? Even if they're people that you don't really want to be around, they're people that are placed next to you for a reason.
Yeah, you're never placed anywhere on accident. You've been placed there on purpose by God. There are people in your life that he has intentionally brought in, not only to benefit you, but also for you to benefit them. So whether it's your family, whether it's your roommates or friends you have, or the random person you sat down next to in class on the first day and now you sit next to each other every day, you are there intentionally and with a purpose and with potential to have influence and to make a difference in their life.
And proximity happens by nature, right? It's happening on accident, whether we like it or not, but intentionality doesn't. And so how you show up in those places, that doesn't just happen on accident. So giving some energy to those things as you're in class. Everybody knows when you're standing in line how easy it is to pull out your phone, or when you're ordering to just order the food to get through the thing, to not, or even to just be around friends but not leverage influence. Like in proximity, we are next to people, but we don't actually offer anything of value. So then we're just hanging out or just surrounding ourselves with people or just having conversation, but there's no, like maybe Paul says, like it's not seasoned with salt. There's no value to that. And so how do we be even more intentional with the places that we find ourselves? Because we are around people, whether we like it or not.
Unless you're a hermit living in the woods by yourself, you have proximity to people.
Yeah, that's good.
I think there's a couple of key places where proximity comes in. And I think the first one is like in the trenches. Like when someone is going through just a really hard season, your proximity is so important in how you show up in that, because they're going to be so attentive to just how you relate to them and what you're communicating to them. And they're going to be so much more open, I think, to seeing like what God can do in them and through them. I also just think like spending time with people when they're stressed and anxious, spending time in people's homes, I feel like is really powerful. Sure. And just being willing to open up in like vulnerable moments and being near people are just super helpful.
How do you navigate that space when there often isn't open, like bold public invitation?
Like when someone doesn't want to hang out with me?
No, it's not like they don't want to hang out, but very rarely do you feel like people are asking for that, right? So when I'm anxious or lonely or overwhelmed or those things, like a lot of people's first inclination is not, man, I gotta make sure someone joins me in this mess. Like our temptation is to hide, to retreat, to isolate, to run away from those things, to try to get well on our own so that we can enter into proximity with people so that we can put on the face and do, like, how in the midst of that, either as the person who's struggling with that or the person who's trying to have how do you enter into that space?
I feel like first it's remembering like, how were you helped? So like when you were stressed and anxious, when you were in the trenches, what was helpful for you? And probably it was a person that just sat with you. And so then recognizing that power and then applying it there. And so what does it look like to kind of just find yourself, I think just making really small moments to just provide care for someone. Is it leaving a small care package at their door and then leaving and writing a note? Is it just inviting them to sit with you at lunch? Is it just I think it's making a space for someone to be who they are and what they're feeling in that moment, and not fully expecting an agenda to come from it, but just offering a space where someone is allowed to bring that up if needed.
Sure. Yeah. That's good.
And then as you grow in relationship with someone, you can learn more about what they really need and get specific. 100%. You know, does this person need me to sit and listen and let them vent, or do they need me to help problem solve with them? And knowing what they need. Or do they need me to drop something off and disappear? Do they need me to like show up and be there even if they say they don't want it? Like,
it. And I think on the flip side of that, there's a unique opportunity too, because it's in the trenches of the hard stuff that it's like, how do we care for people and then let ourselves be cared for? But then in the joy and the celebration, how do we care for people and let ourselves be cared for? Because it's not like Romans talks about, weep with those who weep, but rejoice with those who rejoice. Like it's both ends of that spectrum. And so in the midst of that proximity, like how do you invite people into your joy? Or how do you invite yourself into other people's joy to be able to celebrate with them? Like I think that's a really interesting question.
Yeah, like my favorite people are the people who are willing to weep with me and willing to laugh with me and willing to like celebrate. And I wonder if celebrating with people is harder than weeping with people.
I think some of it's probably personality based.
Yeah.
You know, I think some people are more melancholy and they get to the hard stuff easier, and then some people are way more joyous. And it's like, I don't know if you've ever had a bad day. And so those people, it's probably pretty easy to celebrate with. But both are needed. That's what relationship is the depth in both of those areas where we can connect and be authentically who we are. Because even the most joyous of person has a bad day. And even the most melancholy of person, even Eeyore probably has the sun shine on him every once in a while.
Yeah. But I think too, when we talk about influence, I think we feel pressured to show up as someone who's like really charming and like really good at talking to people and almost becoming someone that we're not, so we can make someone else have a good time. But influence isn't actually gained by like your people skills. It's gained through consistency and care. And like that's how trust is built. And so show up as who you are, not as someone who you think someone else needs you to be.
Yeah. Authenticity within your own personality is so much more of a gift to people than trying to fit the box you assume they need you to be. Like showing up and just being you and offering what you have and what God has graced you with. That's what people need, not this curated, perfect version that has all the answers and all the wisdom and never makes a mistake. That's not attainable for them. That's not attainable for you. That's not helpful to anybody. So I love that. That's so good.
Yeah.
I've been talking to a bunch of our small group leaders this semester, and we've been talking about how a lot of them just feel pressured to know every single thing about the Bible or about God, which is impossible, which is a gift from God. But it's been so fun just getting to remind them, like, honestly, you probably have more influence and are able to relate to people more because you don't have all the answers, because you're in the process of figuring it out. And so actually be okay with the fact that you don't know everything and invite people into that and journey through it together. And I think when we feel like we have to be an expert on everything, it's really hard to connect with the person across the table. But when you allow someone to not have it figured out and to just be who they are, that's like an incredible invitation.
Well, and even like the idea of what it means to be humble in trying to steward influence. If you have great influence and lots of people or small influence, and there is no humble person doesn't at moments feel very overwhelmed or incompetent, right? Like this idea of impersonator theory or like impersonator syndrome, where it's like, I'm not qualified, I can't do it. Like this person is looking to me for answers, or I'm trying to leverage influence here, and I just don't feel like I'm the right person for this. Everybody feels that at some moments. I've been talking to a lot of our leaders too, and one of the things that they struggle with is that not knowing the answers, or not knowing if they know enough, or not knowing if they're good enough. And I just thought it was so funny. Like we just had a staff meeting, and we've been going through this theological book, and our lead pastor gets out this whiteboard, and he just drops like this awesome masterclass theological spectrum idea thought. And half the time I'm sitting there thinking, I should know this. And yet there's moments I don't. And I'm looking around the room and I'm like, I think everybody else knows this and I don't know this. And I'm feeling very insecure and inadequate in the fact that like, God, I've taken the classes, I have the degree, and I don't know these answers. And yet, like, if we talked here, like, there were probably moments where you're like, I don't know what that word is. Like, like I was like
all the words.
Can you spell that for me again? Like, explain, give me a definition just for everybody else in the room. Would you explain?
Just in case.
And so it's so humbling where like this leader comes to me and says, I don't have all the answers. And it's like, well, let me just tell you about the meeting I came out of 30 minutes ago where I was humbled because I don't have all the answers. Yeah. And so then so consistently, every single person you look up, the pastor on the platform to the person sitting next to you, to the small group leader you're trying to learn from, nobody's got it all figured out. But we're all joining each other in the midst of the journey to try to follow Jesus. And that's where real influence is palpable. It's transformative.
Yeah.
And then when you do that consistently, you build trust. And I think one of the things we see is when you have that relational trust and relational equity with someone, they're actually willing to listen to the advice that you give and to the things that you say. And we see in John 1, we call them the come and see interactions, but it's the very beginning of Jesus's ministry, the very beginning of people starting to follow him. And it started with someone just saying, like, you should come follow me to go check out this guy. Sure. It wasn't Jesus standing on like a platform and preaching in front of people. It was someone saw Jesus do something. Someone recognized that he was the Lamb of God. And they went back and they told their friend, brought their friend back. And then that friend went back and told their friend and then brought their friend back. And it was through relational influence, not a platform.
Yeah. Or I think I've been in 1 Corinthians over the last couple months. And 1 Corinthians 7 is the passage I've studied 100 times because we constantly preach about singleness from this passage. And college students, adults always want to hear about dating. And so I feel like I read 1 Corinthians 7 every single year. But this year I read it for the first time, and Paul has this emphasis of stay as you are. And we think, yes, that is directly talking about relationally, right? If you're single, stay as you are. If you're married, stay as you are. If you're widowed, stay as you are. And he's talking to that context for that time. But even just that line, stay as you are, like for God has called you and placed you and influenced you right there for that time. Like in the midst of this, it's not you need to, if you are called to become a Christian, but you're a student at SDSU, drop out to move home, to go to that place, to enroll in a seminary. No, like God probably called you to stay as you are in that dorm room, in that classroom, like at that workplace, though that's the season and the leverage, the influence God has given you. And so don't forfeit that to pursue something else. Like obviously God can call and work in direct ways. This isn't a prescription for everybody, but just as a general rule of thumb, wherever you're at is probably exactly where God has you. So keep showing up, keep being you, keep leveraging and using intentionally that influence for the kingdom of God.
Yeah.
And it's even in hard seasons too. I had a season where I legit kind of got fired from my job, and I had to work at a YMCA that I didn't want to be at, but every day it was just like remembering, like, even in the people I don't want to work with who are really weird, like, God still has something for them that he can do through me if I'm willing to be obedient and to show up to those moments. And I think it kind of forced me to look at my workplace and the people I was working with expectation, not with like obligation, but of like, what would it look like to show up to work today and actually be surprised and like to actually join in the work that God's actively doing in their life right now. I think that's the second part of influence, is actually looking for windows and expecting for God to do something, not like, well, I hope God does something, but it's like actually showing up to work and seeing it as an everyday opportunity to just participate in what God's doing.
Steve Norby, the former lead pastor here, used to use this phrase, and I don't know, he probably stole it from someone, but it's called everyday missionaries. And so often we think of missions and influence and saving people or reaching people as this idea of we got to go to a foreign country, we got to sign up for this trip, we got to pay thousands of dollars, we got to go to that place, we're going to invest really deeply for a week. And that's great, sure, we do that here and we do different things like that. And yet what if we saw every single time we walked into Lowe's and Walmart and Hy-Vee and our workplace and our classroom and we said, God, what are you doing here? And how can I partner with you in this place? And so, no, you don't need to learn a new language and you don't need to understand a new culture. Like, you know the language and you know the culture. Like, those are huge pieces to be able to reach people. Like, as you look through the New Testament, how often is Paul trying to navigate these different cultures he's a part of? And he has to be like an expert in the culture to be able to actually speak adequately to the people. And yet God has you right where you're at. And you already know how people tick and how they communicate and what people value. And so speak into those things, but you got to look for them. You got to show up and you got to ask the question of, God, what are you doing here? And how can I join you in the midst of that?
It's so easy as people to be so self-focused of, I got up this morning, I have a list of things to do, I have these classes to go to, I have to work for these hours. Like, I have all these things, and to be so focused on me, because each of us is the center of our own world. That's just the way it is. And so it's a total paradigm shift to say, okay, yes, I have these things that I have to do, but God, in these moments, how can I actually see you and how can I see others and be more focused on that than simply me? And so, when I sit down across from somebody in the break room and we're eating our lunch, we could totally not talk to each other and do our own separate things. Or what does it look like if I stopped for a moment and asked how their day is going and sparked a conversation? There's a window right there.
Or even just like the interruption you don't want to have when the person comes into your office with like the thing you don't want to deal with. Like, how do you deal with that moment and recognizing it as an opportunity? Yeah, it's going to delay you on something, but how do you see it as an opportunity to just sit and be with someone else?
And I think in the midst of this conversation, as we encourage people to look for windows, I think there is the temptation to already start to feel the fatigue of what it looks like to live on mission. Because it's no longer I can go about life in my own self-centered way, doing exactly what I want and what's most comfortable and convenient to me. The paradigm shift is I will go about life with God's eyes and his spirit in me, looking for opportunities to be intentional with influence. And that's going to require something more of you. Like, to show up in class and not pull out your phone, to wait out the 5 minutes for the professor to start, like, to show up with 5 minutes early, prayerfully saying, God, is there a conversation you want me to, like, that requires something of you. Or to go into the grocery store and say, here's my list, I'm going to get everything as quick as possible, and then get out, and then, no, to walk in there and say, hey, I'm here. God, if there's someone who needs an encouragement, if a smile, a word, like, I'm here, right? That requires something of us. And yet in the midst of that, I think there's two things. One, you got to start small, right? We keep saying that, start small. Like, you don't need to walk into every single space and have a word for every single person. That's probably not the thing God's calling you to this week. But does he have something for someone during your day today? Like, start small, begin to open up, and then just be consistent. Be consistent in that and build a stamina where you can go and you start to think and act different. Because no, you're not going to be completely different tomorrow just by hearing this podcast. But if you start small and you're consistent, maybe in a couple years, maybe in 10 years, your coworkers, your classmates, your family are going to be like, you're really different than what I expected. And the way you function and think is really different, but it didn't happen overnight. Like, you began to see with different eyes what God had for you each and every day. And then that's who you became. Yeah.
I think too, if you are like ready to do something a little bit bigger, like step into something more, I don't know exactly how he words this, but our youth pastor here at the church, he likes to use the language of invite in, don't add. So if I'm going to, for him, he's like, if I'm going to disciple somebody, I'm going to invite them into things I already do instead of adding things. So instead of adding another meal where we're going to go out, what does it look like to, I already know I have to eat lunch at this time. Can I invite you into that? Or like he would invite people to like come hang out with him and they'd do discipleship while they did laundry. Yeah. You know, so what does it look like? And the things you already have to do, how can you invite others into that to create space if it's someone you can intentionally like have that relationship with? But instead of adding something onto your schedule, your life that feels overwhelming and then feels like you're doing too much, how can you just invite them into something you already have to do?
Yeah.
And I think for people leaving and transitioning and navigating what relationships look like now, you still have a ton of relational influence with the people that you met here. And so even as you go to new things, send the text message, like ask people how they're doing. I have friends all over the nation from college, and one of like the best feelings is when they text me and just say, hey, how is ministry going? And that is like, it speaks the world to me, and just being able to share that with them and still understanding that like they're people who can support and lead me well, even if they're not right next to me.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, sometimes it's those really small things.
Yeah.
That like, sure, we would love influence to be the mentor who speaks into every area of our life and like, or the friend who just perfectly understands us. And yet oftentimes in the very small moments, God gives us his grace and he helps us, our hearts to be warmed to the idea of he sees us, he cares for us, he's with us. And so don't miss the opportunity to just in small ways, text messages or thank yous or just little shout outs, like stuff like that.
I think as we wrap up is really the idea that influence has a ripple effect. And I think we're coming up on baptisms this week. And I'm really excited because we often see the ripple effect of what has been happening in Oasis through the baptism that's actually happening. And then part of what happens in baptism is that people share their testimony. And then we get in like dozens of people say, I want to be baptized now because this person spoke into my life because of what God was doing in them. And so I don't think we often understand the fact that even just like the smallest moments can create lasting change and a lasting just like transformation in someone's life.
Totally.
Yeah.
I mean, how beautiful. We don't think about this that often, but how beautiful if we can imagine the ripple effect of someone's faithfulness. I love to do the experiment with some people, especially when we talk about evangelism, is, okay, how did you come to know Jesus? And almost always the first thing out of their mouth is someone else's name. My friend blank, my parent blank, this pastor blank. And so you see right away, very rarely it happens, but very rarely do you have a Damascus Road experience where God has blinded someone and called it like that he has sovereignly in his way just broken down all the walls. Like most of the time, God works through his bride, the church, to reach people, and that looks like your neighbors and your coworkers. And so some of that is like, okay, if you trace that back, who was influential in their life and who was influential in their life and who was, and you can go up the chain, but then you can begin to work down the chain. Like I think of the person who was impactful in my life. And like every disciple I make and every influence I leverage for the kingdom of God, every time I'm intentional with the conversation, like they get a little bit of that reward. Like they get to experience the beauty of who God was because they were faithful in my life and I was faithful in their life. And like there's just such a huge ripple effect for influence.
Yeah, it's like a spiritual generation.
Totally. It's like your one conversation could have impact in ways you would never understand. And yet that's the beauty of what God is doing in so far beyond our scope of comprehension.
Yeah.
I mean, it's the stories we hear at Oasis all the time where like a friend reaches out to the person across the hall.
Totally.
And then that person finds Jesus and then is now reaching out to like their parents. Their parents were disconnected from faith. Now they're there. Now their grandparents are somehow connected. Now their like cousins are going to a different school somewhere. And now their whole entire hall has found Jesus. Like we hear these stories all the time. And like, it's just the power of what happens with when you steward what God gives you, not because you did something right, but because God's spirit is transformative and active. And like, that's how he works in it. He's always wanting people to come to know him if we're willing to be the hands and feet that actually make that opportunity happen.
That's great. Awesome. Good stuff.
So good.
Well, I think that's all we got for today.
Yeah.
Go influence people.
Thumbs up.
You got it.